So are we doing, is this going to be a video or audio only
So
or?
it's going to be so what
Because last time we were in a car.
right. It's a little different this time. I what I do
Can we
for
get background noise?
I know,
You know?
I've upgraded the mics and all this crap to try to get rid of that stuff. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Writing Shotgun with Charlie. This is for Armed Lifestyle Magazine. I am Charlie Cook. I've got a show called Writing Shotgun with Charlie, and I usually interview people in the car. So it's a little weird for me to be on I guess I'm still on the left-hand side, right?
Yeah, you are?
So anyway, I'm very excited to have Rob Beckman with me tonight. Rob has a lot of stuff going on. He's besides holding down, I think we call it a W-2 job these days, right? Like we don't call it a
Yes.
day job anymore; it's a W-2 job. So besides having a W-2 job, he's got a firearm instructing business. He trains your. He's a training counselor, I believe, with the NRA.
Yes, I am.
So he trains people. He trains the trainers. He's got a huge podcast, like it's in the top 2% according to Listen Notes, which
Top
is
2%, correct.
unbelievable. Not that it's not believable, but it's great. And man, what else? You take a lot of training as a student, and you have decided to throw your hat in and run for the NRA Board of Directors. So we've got a lot to get to and a short time to do it. So how did you become a gun guy? I don't remember if we talked about this before.
Uh, I became a kind of a gun guy. My grandparents had a farm. We shot shotguns, went after groundhogs back then, but I really didn't get into guns. Well, did a little in Boy Scouts, like a lot of people do when they're in Scouts. Go, you can go and shoot 22s and
Mhm.
such until I got married and I decided to take up hunting. And hunting required me to not just go to the range and have somebody hand me a gun and shoot, like it was on my grandparents' farm or in the Boy Scouts, but actually go along and learn more about it. And you learn more about pistols and shotguns and rifles. And then once that progressed at the time back in the early 2000s. I was hunting in Indiana. In Indiana, in order to hunt with a pistol, you needed to have a license to do it, for it. So I went along, got my Ohio concealed carry license since I'm a Ohio resident, right after they made it legal back in 2004. So I was one of the early people that adopted that. And I can remember going and thinking to myself, I could do that. It'd be fun to teach other people, and it's really kind of blossomed from there because once I got my initial firearm certification, I started giving back to the Boy Scouts, teaching them, safe gun handling, being a merit badge counselor for rifle and shotgun muzzle loading. But then I started going along and teaching family and friends to be able to do, how to be safe and responsible with a firearm because 2000s or early, 2010 around there, concealed carry was still pretty new across the United States.
Right, but
For
a lot of people were getting into it back then. Like there were a
Mhm,
lot of
right.
people getting licenses and a lot of that's just I became an instructor in 2007. So and I thought I was late to the game.
Hmm.
So everybody was becoming an instructor.
Yeah. But one thing I did, when I took my course, I found out a little bit more about what you had to do to become an instructor. So I became an instructor shortly after that. And then it was around 2011, 2012, not really sure when, I got the opportunity through the Boy Scouts to become an NRA training counselor. And as a NRA training counselor, I could go along, give back to the scouts, and train other adults to be instructors for the scouts. But that also gave me the entry point to go along and teach other instructors on how to put on the NRA programs for it. I'm one of the few NRA training counselors in the United States that's certified in all their civilian programs. So whether it's rifle, shotgun, muzzleloading, protection,
Inside the home,
re,
outside
re,
the home, refused to be
yeah,
a victim.
even the NRA CCW course, which I'm one of the few
Which
people,
love it.
certified in that. So, I blossomed out along those lines for it because NRA has a good training program when it comes to, helping people get that, initial knowledge. But then it was about 2015, the market was maturing, changing. USCCA came along, and I actually became a USCCA instructor. And a year after that, became a training counselor for them, so I could go along teach teach instructors
Those
how
two.
to put on the USCCA course. And then a couple years after that, I actually became what the USCCA calls a senior training counselor. So I was going up to their offices in West Bend, Wisconsin, training the new training counselors on how to teach instructors. And this all kind of came about because as I became more involved with instructing more in the training counselor standpoint, you realize that whether it was NRA or USCCA, they do a great job in coming up with great material.
Hmm.
They go along. You want to teach somebody how to hold a pistol, how to go along and run a shotgun or a rifle. They've got it down. The problem is, and you probably can identify with this, is as soon as you get that little certification, you get a shirt that says, "Hey, I'm certified." You get the question like, "Okay, how do I let people know I'm available?" And then remember back there in the 2015s, 2018s, 2020s, we had a really big, headwind when it came to advertising firearm courses or anything with, a firearm in it on social media.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of questions, me being somebody who had been around teaching for about 10 years, where people were asking, how did you do this? How did you get into teaching at this place? How did you get into there? And that's when I started taking new instructors kind of under my wing and said, "Hey, check out this. Don't just look for a gun club. Look for other places that might have an opportunity for you. Don't just go along and advertise at the local gun shop. Go along and advertise at the corner convenience store. Go along and let people know that you just don't teach people how to get their concealed carry license, but you teach them basic firearm skills. So if they've got a pistol at home, people can come to you and find out, okay, how do I hold this just to move it from one location to the next location? What do I tell my kids? All those different kinds of things to educate responsible gun ownership on how to do it. And that's kind of where kind of blossom into the Firearm Trainer podcast, because all those kind of topics I dive into, not just listening me to a monologue, but I have industry experts coming on that are experts in marketing, experts in affiliate marketing, to where you go along and think, okay, for the last 20 years, everybody's been charging 100 to 150 bucks for a concealed carry license. Well, that doesn't cover any of the inflation. But at the same time, if you've got yourself a reasonable affiliate marketing deal, you can go along and make some additional cash on the side and maybe make 30, 40, 50% more without even raising your price. And those are things to where, unless you've got a marketing degree or you come from that area, it was kind of foreign to a lot of people. And I got into it early, and I'm able to go along, pass that on, and know a few people that know people, I guess, is probably about the best way of saying it.
That's great. I know, getting back to the where people start, here in Massachusetts, the we have licensing courses, and there's only, I think, like 29 classes that are official classes. It all changed, and nobody knows how it's going to change. It's supposed to it changed in August of 2024. It's supposed to start to take effect in April of 2026, and I don't even know if the state's got their stuff ready. But to me, it was important to get a lot of NRA certifications, because people that aren't gun folks don't know anything about the USCCA. Like, they wouldn't
Hmm.
go look for it. They would Google
Right.
it and it would probably come up, but they're probably going to an NRA website or looking for someone that's an NRA instructor, or someone that's, for me, it's someone that's certified by the state police to give you the certificate that you need in order to get your concealed carry permit.
Hmm. Definitely. And that's, where you go along, and the NRA is the 900-pound gorilla in the room. They've got the muscle, they've got the political clout in a lot of cases to really affect gun laws and help support gun legal gun ownership throughout the United States.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I know and which we'll get into as well, but the NRA has been taking a beating over the last, several years, but the last year and a half, it's really starting to change, and people are starting to see that the NRA is doing more, and they're getting more involved, they're getting more active, and they're trying to right the ship. And it's not gonna be quick. You can't just bang a UE and change everything. Like Doug Hamlin's out there busting his tail, going around the country. He was at the Gun Rights Policy Conference at the end of September.
Hmm.
He goes to NRA dinners that are all over the place. Like, this guy's out and about trying to make some changes
Hmm.
so that we all have a better NRA.
Well, let's put it this way. I've been a NRA lifer for probably a little over 10 years now. And since becoming a life member, I became a patron, and I'm up to a benefactor member. So I believe in the mission.
Mhm.
It frustrated me to no end to go along and see what was happening under the old regime, to where we were taking care of our friends and buddies instead of going along and taking care of the membership for it.
Mm.
And being a nonprofit and different things along those lines, it's always a challenge to balance. I mean, your product is pretty much what you do for your membership as a non-profit.
Yeah.
It's not like Ford or GM, to where if you can put out a better car, boom, that's your product. But your product is really taking care of your membership, and that's where, over the last 5 years plus, there's been quite a bit of anxiety on my part, and I know a lot of other people about where the NRA was headed, and that's where I worked over the last 5 years to get a number of people elected to the NRA board, because I knew that they could make a difference, knew that they had the energy to make it going, and that's kind of where I got my hand caught, because as I was pushing people forward, somebody pulled my arm and said, "You're coming with us this year," and that's where my run for the NRA board of directors comes
Where
in.
where it kicked in.
Not something that I was honestly searching for, but at the same time, I'm not somebody who takes a back seat and says, "Well, somebody else will take care of that." If it needs to be done, I'll stand up and take the lead and make sure it gets done, because
Mhm.
I want to see it get done versus going along and same thing being broken tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, before we get into more NRA stuff, what other you take a lot of training as a student as well, and I know this because we did a Mag 40 class with Mashar in
Mm-hmm.
in Sioux Falls, South Dakota a few years ago. You scored a what, 298?
298. Yeah,
Yeah,
I was two. Well, I was one behind, or two behind Mossad, and I came in number two.
yeah.
But I beat Neil Widener, so that was the thing.
That was the only goal. Well, so I've
Sorry,
got a
Neil, if you're listening to this.
I've got a fun story. We're good friends with Amanda Suffolk, and she and I are, fun competition between the two of us. So we scored her target, and I swear to God, I can see it in my mind's eye. Mass was scoring her target. He gave her a 1 point for something that wasn't there. You know what I mean? Like it stopped cracking the paper on the black line, and Mass counted it as 1 point up. And then I remember we walked behind Masadi. We looked at each other like, I can't believe he didn't do that. Like he gave you that point, right? And then lo and behold, I do the qual, right? We do the FBI qual. I did the FBI qual. I was 1 point behind Amanda. So all she did was run around. She went on. We were on the Polite Society podcast, and she gets on there for the next episode. She's like, "Hey, I just want to let everyone know I beat Charlie by 1 point. Okay, so doesn't
Hmm.
matter how many points, I still beat him." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" And then she went on her own show and did the same thing.
Hmm.
So it's you've done some other training too, right? Like you're
Yeah.
always taking classes.
Well, I've taken the Mag 40 course, which I highly recommend for Mossad, because it really gives you the more legal understanding of self-defense, as well as good gun handling skills too, which is what I'm looking for. I've also taken the firearm instructor course with the International Association of Law Enforcement Firearm Instructors,
Oh,
and
cool.
then came back for their master instructor development course too. So not only is it pistol, it's shotgun, and it's also carbine rifle uh, to go along, and again, try to understand not just what it is for concealed carry, which a lot of times that's what people are getting into firearms for, but actually understand how things are applied in different areas.
Mhm.
And I teach some law enforcement from time to time, but I
Oh,
also teach women. I teach smaller people. I teach bigger people, and having a diverse background really helps out. Every year, I don't necessarily take a firearm course. A couple years ago, I took tactical combat casualty care. Not that I was going to be going into a war zone, but because I wanted to know a little bit more about first aid. I had all the basic first aid
Right.
down, understood the basic stuff, CPR, mouth to mouth, how to put the bandages on. But when you go through tactical combat casualty care, you start getting into, okay, what would you do if
Mm.
this happened? And really get into those scenarios that start pushing your knowledge and your limit. And that's where, when you go along, you start learning, because here's one of the things that I realized in the middle of that class. I'm used to go along and having the person sit down and tend to them. Well, in some of the scenarios, realize that, wait a minute, we're in a hot zone here, and we've got to drag this person who is injured out of the hot zone and
Mm.
into a safe zone so that we could properly work on them. That was completely foreign to me until I took that course, but it makes sense for it.
Yeah.
And some of my students might need that help for it. It's good for me personally. Which is really good.
Mm.
You've got topics such as church security these days. I go along, and Ed Monk has done several courses on that. And the good thing about it is you just keep layering it on. It's like, okay, what I learned 5 or 10 years ago isn't invalid, but it may not be current. And that's the one thing I go along and again instill in my listeners, as well as the instructors that I teach, that you've got the best information possible right now. Now go along and realize that something's going to change tomorrow. They're going to change the laws. You were talking about laws in Massachusetts changing. Well, the laws in Ohio have changed. And it's from 2004 when I got my original license. Back then, it was illegal for you to carry a concealed weapon in a car.
This boggles my mind.
You
This
got a concealed carry license, but you can't conceal carry in a car. It had to be in plain sight, which, yeah, it's a whole nother issue. We got the law changed, but
Yeah.
as I go along, point out to people, and that's just a small example, things change. And if you go and you're like, I've got everything, I know everything 100% today, tomorrow something's going to change for it.
Yeah. Sure.
The NRA is pushing to try to get national reciprocity. If when that goes through, what's that going to look like? I guarantee you, it's not as simple as that. You're going to be able to walk into New York City, with your Ohio concealed carry license or with your Massachusetts concealed carry license, and they're going to be happy about it.
Yeah.
And that's where the devil's always in the details.
Absolutely. With the change that we have in Massachusetts, one of the requirements is you have to do live fire, and they don't have they haven't defined what live fire means. And I always ask people, I'm like, all right, and I've talked to police officers and called them for clients that I've had and said, so you're looking for live fire. Are you looking for a round count? Are you looking for a certain target? Are you looking for certain calibers? Like, you tell me what you're looking for, and I'll make sure that these people have this. So, of course, I don't think you and this is a weird thing, being an instructor. It's weird to say I don't think you should have training for a permit, but if you're going to have a permit, you should take some training, right?
Hmm.
And so my attitude here in Massachusetts is I don't know if they're going to have a qualification because they are going to say you should have live fire, but I'm like, you know what? Let's do the if we're going to have a qualification, let's go all out. Let's do the FBI qualification, make everyone fire 60 rounds from all the different places and all the different positions, and then let me carry every place the FBI can carry. Because
Hmm.
I've met all of the stuff that the federal government has, the top lines of their people. I want the exact same thing, right? And
Hmm.
like you said, the states are not going to agree. I live in occupied territory. Massachusetts is not going to want to do anything that Arizona wants to do and will accept.
Right.
There's no way, no way, no way. So
Yep.
it is going to be, like you said, the devil's going to be in the details. It's going to be fussy.
Yep.
There are states that have permitless carry, and they're the constitutional carry, or green states are what we call them here in Massachusetts. But the constitutional carry states will still have they'll still have restrictions if you have permits, right? So you still need to know what those are. Can you carry into a bar? Can you carry into a gun-free zone? Do the gun-free zones have if there's a sign, what kind of sign do they have to have? And does the sign have does it have the force of law with it? So there's a lot
Hmm.
to it for sure.
Yeah, and that's another one of those education pieces that I stay up to date as best I can from the legal standpoint. And not that I'm a lawyer, but from the standpoint of picking up some of the different factoids
Yeah.
from articles and different things to pass on to the students. Because if you're a concealed carry student and you're like, okay, gonna get my license, I'm gonna carry, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I bring up like, okay, keep this in mind that you probably need some kind of self-defense insurance. Not that I think you'd make the wrong decision, but because here's a couple different examples where people did everything right and still got sued.
Hmm.
Or you go along and it sounds right because you saw that on a movie someplace, but you realize it's like, yeah, that's not legal, and you're going to need a really good lawyer to go along and get yourself out of that. And those are things where, again, when I teach my courses and I encourage instructors to do this, is don't just go along, read the law to them, or tell them don't do this, don't do that.
Hmm.
Give them some of the examples because, at least in my mind, if I know that I shouldn't do something, and then I hear something where somebody's gotten in trouble with it or how it's been applied, law especially, it makes a lot more sense to me about why I want to do things because a lot of times people make comments to me. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. It's like, it's a law. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just the law. It
Right.
is what it is. For
Yeah.
it, I mean, it's just like I was saying. In 2004, it was illegal to go along and have a concealed firearm in a motor vehicle, even though you had a concealed carry license. And it's like, how does that make sense? It's like,
Doesn't
again,
make any
don't
sense.
try to make sense of it. It's just the way it is.
This is what we have. Right. Right.
Hmm.
All right. Well, we've hit your instructing, how you became an instructor, and all of the stuff. Holy moly, man! You have quite the resume of things you can teach, which is great that for you to offer to your students and your clients. Then you got into the Firearm Trainers podcast, and
Hmm.
how that got going, and how you're helping everyone with this. It is in the top 2% on listen notes. Top
Top
2%.
2%. We've got over 15,000 listeners that download it. Every week, and it's one of those things to where a podcast, and you probably identify with this, Charlie. You don't know who listens. You can see a number that go up and number go down, but you don't really know if how big of an impact it make. And I do have to say, every once in a while, there's a student that comes to a class, or a instructor that comes to a class, or somebody tells me that they found a great value out of the podcast I have, which is really what's kept it going for the last 6+ years.
That's
And it gets tough at times to go along. Is this really worth it? But when people say, "Hey, I listened to you. I didn't realize I could do this, or I went along and expanded my business because of that," it's very rewarding because I'm not doing it big. They're not paying me to do it. I'm doing this to be educational and to further on the 2A community as a whole, because 2A is a civil right. Great thing that we have in this country that a lot of other countries don't have. But at the same time, we need to make sure people realize the responsibility that comes with that, and that responsibility isn't going to be instilled by the government in us. It's going to be instilled by good education, where people realize, hey, I'm allowed to do this. Yeah, that's my right, but I also have the responsibility to make sure this doesn't happen with it.
right. Well, let's tie the podcasting stuff into the NRA, so we have some time to get into that. This past year at the NRA annual meetings in Atlanta, one of the new things that they did is they had a Voices of the Second Amendment radio row, and we were both fortunate enough to be asked to participate in this.
Hmm.
Um, I had some cool people on my show. I had Hickok on the show, and I talked to Brian Eastridge from he's a big revolver guy and whatnot.
Hmm.
But
American Fighting Revolver.
American
Hmm.
Fighting Revolver. Yes, thank you. Um, and at one point, I looked over at your table and I'm like, you've got John Farnham and Ken Hackenthorne, and I'm like, I don't want to be doing my show right now. I want to be hanging out with those guys. How do I get them to get in my show? And by the time I was done, they were long gone. So,
Hmm.
um, the NRA is making a lot of changes, and they're doing a lot of things differently, and they're doing a lot of new things. And this,
Hmm.
this was one of them. And what did you think? How did it go for you? Well, I know how it went for you because I listened to, like, I don't know, it seemed like 2.5 months worth of content that you got at NRA. Because you're like, this is another episode we did at NRA, and you got all the background noise and everything.
Hmm. Yeah, it went really good. For it, we recorded quite a bit, and the one thing that the NRA being there really facilitated is you've got a lot of industry movers and shakers.
Mm.
Ken Hackathorn been on podcast before. Great guy. John Farnham, I had never been able to nail down. And guess what? I was able to get them both on the podcast, which was, a real coup. One of the things I go along and tell people to see how big of a difference the new NRA regime is, the leadership there, is I was sitting there in between a couple guests getting things organized, and Doug Hamlin, comes over and asks, "Hey, I'm available. If you want, we can do a quick interview." And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, is this somebody pranking me or not? Like, no, I give them a
Right.
headset, give
Where's
them a
where's
microphone, and boom, we get a 10-minute interview out of that. Now,
That's
by
awesome.
comparison, I've been to a lot of NRA annual meetings. Every time I saw the old executive vice president, he had an entourage, and nobody
Yeah.
went up to him. Nobody could touch him, say anything unless he wanted to.
Yep.
And that was a big difference because the only person with Doug Hamlin was a marketing guy. And the
Mhm.
only thing the marketing guy was doing is like, hey, you've got another interview at, another booth in 10 minutes, keeping them on time.
Right. Keep them
Nobody
on
was
time.
going along and limiting who could walk up to him. And he even admitted that there have been members that walked up to him and pretty much said, you guys have really screwed up the last couple of years. And Doug went along and said, you're right. We've
Mm.
got to fix this,
Yeah.
and we need your support to fix it. It's not one of those things where Doug could do it by himself. He needs
He needs
support
a team.
behind him. He needs to have the board that will go along and give him the support he needs, and also go along and give him the guidance he needs. I mean, Doug doesn't have every answer, but when you have a board, they need to go along and step up and keep the ship upright also, and
Yeah.
help him out. I've been on several different boards. I'm on the Ohio Rifle and Pistol Association board now, and the biggest thing about the board is you're always dealing with problems. I
Hmm.
mean, it's not a nice fluffy job to where it's like, oh, take a picture with me because I'm the vice president. No, you go along, come there, and it's like, okay, how are we going to do this? We've
Yeah.
got this bill that came in, and we've got to figure out how to cover it. Where are we going to spend this money that we have? How are we going to take care of this? And that's where it's great to celebrate successes, but it's also one of those things to realize the board's a lot of work, or should be, for it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see over the last 2+ years that we've gotten rid of a lot of the uh, token board members that go there
Right.
that like to have their like to acclaim their board members, and thank you for their work that they've done over the years.
Hmm.
But let's get some people there that can roll up their sleeves and have some good ideas for it, because obviously with everything I've done with training, I want to help out on the education training side to not just go along and refresh the content to say, okay, it's up to 25 standards, but actually look and see what the community needs in 2025 from a training perspective for it, which is a little bit different than just going along and printing a new book cover, or doing different things along those lines. And then also go along and make sure that the NRA is looking forward down the road, because as I've collected signatures over the past couple months, one of the things I realized is there's a lot of people that let their memberships lapse. There are a lot of people that are new gun owners that don't see a need for being an NRA member for it, and specifically minorities and women. I go along, and husband's a member, but the wife isn't, the girlfriend isn't.
Right.
You've got these friends that are like, yeah, NRA doesn't do anything for me type of thing. And it's like, do you realize what they just did with the NFA tax? Do you realize what they're doing with the lawsuits to push the Second Amendment as a civil right?
Hmm.
A lot of times people don't know that. And those are the issues that the NRA has to address. Not that they're doing something wrong right now, but that they've got to go along and promote it more of the good stuff that they're doing. The national reciprocity, what that how, is that going to pass? I don't know, but they're pushing it. It's one of those their agenda items for it, and they just keep at it, because we've got a favorable president right now when it comes to the Second Amendment. In 3 years, who knows who we're going to have? But
Right.
the thing is, the NRA, we need an NRA today to make sure that we keep the current administration on track. We're going to need the NRA in 4 years to make sure that next administration stays on
Stays
on
on track
track too.
for
It's a
sure.
150-year-old organization, and there's been a lot of different adjustments over time, and that's where this is just an adjustment. They're getting new leadership, they're getting new board members. The NRA 2.0 group is really bringing a lot more energy to the board and asking questions, to where the last board meeting was really exciting, because the NRA actually saw membership growth for the first time in approximately 5 years. That's a big win.
It is. And
And at the same time, they actually saw a small increase in revenue. They were as they weren't bleeding money out anymore. Now, obviously, some of that bleeding was caused by lawsuits and
right.
everything,
Right.
but it's one of those things where things are heading in the right direction for it.
Great. That's great. And so you've got all the petitions. You got enough signatures for the petition, and
Hmm.
you also you're the only one that got the nod that's not an incumbent from the nominating committee.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
As I said, I don't know the entire board. I probably know about a dozen of the
Yeah.
current board members, and I've been pushing, them to go along and make changes over the last couple of years
Hmm.
for it, helping out where I could, circulating their petitions. And as I said, as I was pushing them forward to go along and say, "Hey, you got to vote for these people," they
Hmm.
reached back this year and said they need somebody who has the experience with the technology and social media to reach people that have that can help out with education training, and also somebody who I'm an IT professional by trade. That's what my W-2 job is.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about it is it's gotten me into pretty much every facet of a organization, from obviously all the computer networking and server security type, but also from the legal finance piece of it. I've installed systems in those. So I understand a lot more of those details than just your average person of what goes on in the entire organization. And that's where hopefully if I make it on the board, I can help them modernize some of those things about going along and looking and say, okay, we've got all these old systems, but maybe there's a more cost-effective way of doing it. Maybe there's a better way of engaging the membership through a mobile app. I know the current board's pushing very hard for a mobile app, but one of the suggestions I had to them is, besides a mobile app, how about going along and the NRA members be able to go along and find nearby training or nearby instructors? Because
Yeah.
there again, you've got all these different pieces the NRA does, and there's a lot of times people don't realize that there's an instructor, half a mile away from them, or
Right.
that there's a shooting competition that is this weekend that is open to all kinds of skill
Oh,
levels.
yeah.
And those are the
Cool.
things that if we can put that out there to the membership, all of a sudden there's a great benefit.
For sure, for sure. All right, listen, we only have a moment left. How can people find you and all of your all the stuff that you're up to?
Um, well, you can find a lot my podcast at the Firearm Trainer podcast. You can also go along. My training company is called American Defense Training dot US, and you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I'm posting updates on a regular basis there, and also to see what the NRA is up to is check out the Members Take Back the NRA Facebook page.
Facebook group.
There is a lot of
A lot of stuff
information
going on.
that is posted there on a regular basis, not just by myself, but by other concerned NRA members. Not all board members, sometimes there are board members, but it's a place to find out information that's going on, both good and bad, about the NRA to make you feel better about what the NRA is doing. Because one of the biggest problems we had for many years is transparency. Where's my money going? Where's my $35 every year going to?
Right.
And that's the what the NRA 2.0 is really pushing for is transparency. So as a member, I know that my money is going to a good cause. It's going to the civil defense of people. It's going to promote 2A laws and
Right.
legislation along those lines.
Very cool. All right. Well, listen, we need to wrap it up there. Thank you guys all for tuning in. Please make sure you check out the article in Arm Lifestyle Magazine. That's a free resource for everybody. Check out some of the previous shows that I've had. Rob, thank you so much for being on the show, and I look forward to seeing you in SHOT Show in just a couple of months. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.